Hi, Run Your Story family. This is Allison Gilliard with Run Your Story, where every story needs to be heard. And you guys are going to want to hear this story. It is so good. I am such a fan of Clint, Pagan, and what an amazing runner, what an amazing human being. We sit down and we talk about all the things from his crazy Boston story. There was a lot of madness that went on to crossing the finish line of that. His strength training is so fun that he does, and I'll give you a hint, it has something to do with a horse. Of course, why not? And Clint reminds us that whether in life or on the pavement, that we just keep pounding. And such a great reminder of who we are as humans and that we really do lean on one another. It's absolutely incredible. So thank you so much, my friend Clint. So grateful for you and your story and cannot wait to see what else you do. You're just incredible. So absolutely love this opportunity and the runner and the human that Clint is. So thank you so much, Clint, and cannot wait for all of you guys to hear his story. And this story is made possible by Gilliard Tech Services. Guys, he edits our podcast. He also updates our website. He makes our website as runner friendly as possible because we as runners know we just want one simple click. And so he does an outstanding job of making sure that runners know exactly what they want for a website, and he does the same for the community. So if you have a current website that needs updating or a brand new one, he's got you. He has such an extensive background, not only with his computer science, but the passion for web development. He really listens to his clients. And right now, he's a little bit of extra time to be able to freshen up your online presence. From modernizing existing sites to building new ones from scratch, he has you covered. So if you're interested, reach out through the link in the podcast show notes or visit GilliardTS.com and let Gray bring your vision to life with Gilliard Tech Services. I know for Run Your Story, he has expanded them, and I know anyone that uses his services are always super impressed and happy, and he's always a phone call away. So definitely guys check him out. He's also on social media. Again, GilliardTS.com. And again, a huge shout out and thank you to Gray for all that he does for this Run Your Story community. This podcast would not be what it is without him. So thank you, Gray. All right, guys. Go lace those running shoes, get ready, get set, and go run with my friend Clint and his run story. Finally. And I'm just going to say it because so many of us agree on this, and that is that we're sitting among running royalty right here.
Oh my gosh.
Just came back from Boston.
Yes.
Yeah. The Clint is what I would. No. Yes. 100%. We've been talking for a while, and we go to church together, but didn't know that because we met at Do Goods at a run, and then we just happened to see each other one day at Mars Hill, and I was like, what?
Like, hey, I know you.
So I'm super excited. Thank you so much for taking time to share your story and let me pick your brain because I am so excited about this.
It honestly, it is. It's a pleasure. Super excited about this as well.
Yay! So Clint, how does your run story start?
Yeah, so my story is fairly simple. In some ways it's pretty complicated, but with my current job, they do the Corporate Cup series. So Division 4, shout out to Lenzing. We're number 1 right now. But before that, we lived in Atlanta, my wife and I did. And I started running just to clear my mind, and I battled with anger a lot and just bottled up, pent up emotions and things like that. And I found that running a couple of miles really allowed me to clear my mind and leveled me out a lot. So that's how I got into running. But currently, the Corporate Cup through Lenzing, my current job, is really where it all started over the past few years.
When you sent me your questions and I saw that, it really resonated with me because there are days where Gray's like, Allie, if you don't go outside and go for a run or go work out, like clearly you need to go do you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he knows that movement is what gets me calmed down.
Yeah.
So I totally understand that.
Yeah, I would be mad at the world for whatever reason or be stressed because of work, and I would sit down and I would pray, but I would still have these emotions inside of me. And when I would go run, I started listening to worship music or whatever the case may be, and it would draw me closer to God, and it would just lift all of that stress and everything completely off of me.
I would say we're twins, but we're not because I don't run your speed, Clint. So obviously you have learned some lessons from running. So what are those?
Yeah, for me, there's been lots of lessons. One of them is consistency. If I'm trying to reach a goal and I'm not consistent, you can determine where your fitness is and things like that. And I know if I'm not consistent with it, then I'm not going to hit that goal. But also for me, running is 80% mental and 20% physical.
Ooh.
So I can always tell if I'm preparing for a marathon or a 5K. It really doesn't matter what it is. I get pretty nervous beforehand.
What?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. And so even if I'm running a 5K with my kids, like it's
no.
Yeah.
No.
I get pretty nervous. So for me, it's just trying to mentally clear that pathway. If I know I can break down those mental barriers, I know I'll do pretty well in the race. So.
And speaking of your kids, I want to bring this up. You had your kids running at the reindeer run, and it was such a cool thing. One was pushing a stroller, and it was just, you were so encouraging for them. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I'm like, we would pass each other. Right. The only time I would ever pass Clint. And I think y'all still beat us. So.
Yeah, they really just started getting into it, and I don't want to push them too hard or anything. I want them to do it because they enjoy it or because they love it. And so I can't remember exactly which race it was, but it was down on Dolphin Island. It could have been Hurricane Run or one of those races, but I wore this full-on monkey headset, ran the entire 5K with it, and the kids just absolutely loved it. And so, yeah, you got to throw some fun in there every now and then.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
And what a memory you're creating for your kids.
Yeah.
To be like, yeah, I ran with my dad. And, hey, Dad, you remember that time you dressed like a monkey?
Yeah. Yeah. So I try to pull some of my inspiration from Brent and Lance.
Oh,
so,
gosh.
They're always a bunch of goofballs and stuff. So.
You say that, and they're going to have you running in one of the costumes come Christmas.
Right. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I have to know, what is a favorite race of yours?
Yeah, one of my favorite races, honestly, is the Justin Hasty Green Dress Run from 2019.
Okay.
And I was in that zone where I was trying to get fast, but I just kept hitting a wall. And I felt like my fitness was where I could break the 20-minute. Like everybody always had the, what do you consider fast? You Google it and everything. It's what's fast for a guy. And it's if you can break 20 minutes in a 5K. And so I was around 20 minutes and 30 seconds, 21 minutes or whatever. And so we get to the Justin Hasty Run, and Jack Bishop, I'm not sure. So Jack Bishop is a close friend and kind of a mentor to me in the running community. And all the fast guys are up front, and they're talking like, what are you going to run today? What are you going to run? And Jack asked me, like, Clint, what are you going to run today? And I was like, I'm going to try to break 20 minutes for the first time. And so at this time, Jack was a 17, 18-minute 5K-er.
Wow.
And it impacted me, and still does, is that he took away from his race to help pace me to break 20 minutes. And I ended up running like a 19:24 for that race. It wasn't like anything close to 20 minutes. I was well ahead of breaking that 20 minutes. And so he slowed down the entire race. And then at the very end, he took off when he knew I was going to break that 20-minute barrier. But to me, that's an awesome memory. And it's a testament to our running community here.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. So I got to know, what is Clint's pre-race routine?
Yeah, obviously with the nerves comes overanalyzing.
Not at all, Clint.
Yeah. So I overanalyze everything, but also with that, I try to visualize most of the local races I've done. And so you can learn at which points you're going to start getting inside of your own head and trying to push yourself. And for me, I always try to visualize somewhere around the halfway point for any race, even if it's a 5K, somewhere around like a mile and a half or so. I know I'm going to start struggling mentally. and trying to push myself. So I try to visualize, what am I going to think about in those moments? What is it that's going to push me through that barrier and everything? And that's one of my pre-race routines. The other one is setting out all of my gear. And my wife will tell you I'm horrible at planning and organizing everything, but for some reason this one thing, like I'm going to get my gear ready, I'm going to visualize it, and so that part of it, that's normally what I do.
Yeah. Flat Clint with all his style.
Yeah. So
when you hit those barriers at the halfway marks, what are some things that you tell yourself?
I think about what I want the finish line to look like for me, and so if I have anything left in the tank, I'm going to start trying to tap into that. And I always want to tell my kids I always pushed it to the limit. And so for me, that's why I always try my hardest at everything I do, not just running, but everything in life. I try to push myself to the limit to be an example for my kids and for the people that are around me that watch and stuff like that. And so if I'm crossing the finish line and I'm smiling and waving, you'll probably never see that because I'm always dead at the finish line. So always around that halfway mark, I start trying to tap into whether that's my kids thinking about their faces at the finish line, the story that I can tell to my kids and friends and everything like that, but also reaching into that inspiration of overcoming. I always think of being an overcomer, and that word sticks out to me a lot of times, like you're going to be an overcomer in this moment right here. And whether you got to break it down, because if you're running 5K, it's just like you got a mile and a half to go, or 10K, it's like you got 3 miles left, or whatever the case may be. The longer the race is, the longer that halfway mark is. Right. And so I start trying to break those miles down a little bit at a time and say, you're going to overcome this next mile. You're going to overcome this next half mile. Pick your pace back up and that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
I like that. You cross the finish line. You see your kids.
Yeah.
What does that look like? What is that celebration like?
Breathe. I'm normally one of those people you'll see laying off on the side on their back trying to catch their breath and stuff. But yeah, a good cool down for me after I see my kids and my wife and them smiling and going through the immediate thoughts of how the race went with them. And then whether it's just me by myself or if there's some friends at the race and stuff like that, doing a short cool down just to get everything back down to normal level. So that's what the immediate after race looks like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Try to bring the smile back on the face.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
What is your favorite running item? Like you will not go run without this item.
Yeah. So I probably had a different answer a few months back, but since training for Boston, I had posted that I was trying to break in some new shoes, getting ready for Boston, and my feet were just getting torn up. And I posted a picture, and actually Aaron Friesmeyer commented on the picture and said, "What kind of socks are you using?" And I was literally running in these cheap, thin Walmart socks, and he's like, "Dude, you got to get some good socks."
Yeah.
And honestly, I went and got said socks, and it was the absolute biggest game changer for me. Yeah, cut the blisters away, but more than that, the cushioning, I was like, what have I been running in all of these years?
Did your socks make you faster, Clint?
Oh, it didn't make me faster, but it made my feet a lot happier. I know that. Yeah. I was able to walk for the next few hours.
Wow, that is crazy. All these years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just something that I battle. Even like when I qualified for Boston, I was running in horrible socks then, and I battled blisters the same way this go around. And I just thought, that's what you did. Yeah, that's what you dealt with. And no, evidently there are good socks out there that keeps this stuff from happening.
I'm actually surprised by that answer. I thought you were going to say your Koros.
Yeah.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Well, that honestly has been a good game changer for me as well. Yeah, but yeah, the watch is awesome as well.
And I was going to say that because I feel like I influenced you to buy a Koros.
No, I'll be honest with you. I was already on the fence, and then I saw you got your Koros, and we had a couple of conversations about it. And I was like, you know what? This is it. If my Garmin ever goes out, I'm making the switch.
And you got it for your birthday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I did. And and it's a funny story because my Garmin, I thought it was going out on me. And because I was hitting, my lap time was on each and every mile, and my lap times were completely off. And I was like, what is going on with my watch? And I get back home and I tell my wife, yeah, my watch is not, it's done hit the fan, but it's not cutting it anymore. And my wife surprised me with the Coros, which, shout out to her, greatest wife ever. But come to find out, my watch was actually set on kilometers and not miles. So the Garmin was
American.
Yeah. So the Garmin was still good, but I want to say it was a God thing because it pushed me over the edge to get a Coros. So, and here we are.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. I just felt like I just needed people to know that influenced Clint in just a little small way.
That's right.
When it's running royalty,
That's right.
there was a little influence.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I mean, just building a workout on here.
It's so fun.
I was like, oh my gosh, I've been missing out on a lot.
And the battery life is insane.
Yeah. I'm like, every other day I'd have to charge my Garmin. But the Coros, I'm like a week and a half later.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is what all the hype's about.
I love how yours is a week and a half later. Mine's like a month.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Running distances here. That's the difference. Okay, so you talked about running socks. What are your running shoes?
Yeah, so just to put a disclaimer out there, I'm not a total carbon fiber shoe fanboy.
Okay.
But I am a carbon fiber fan.
That disclaimer means nothing, Clint.
Right, I know, yeah. I am a fan of the Vaporflies.
Okay.
But honestly, I know a lot of people go the Vaporfly and Alphafly route and stuff like that. But for me, the Saucony Speeds, the Speed 2s for me, whenever I was training for my qualifying marathon, I trained in the Speed 2s. And no matter what I threw at them, they could handle it.
Wow.
And of course, those are a nylon plate, but not really carbon fiber. But those shoes, to me, are the number one shoe because tempo runs, long runs, easy runs, just everything that I could throw at that shoe, it would handle it, and my feet felt fresh. That's the perfect shoe, I feel like. Yeah.
Okay. The speed for the speedster.
Yeah.
Got it. For your longer runs, how do you fuel? What does that look like?
Yeah, I'm a big gel fan. Beforehand, I do try to carb up a little bit. And I think that gives me an excuse to eat junk food most of the time. Because you hear a lot of people say you can never out-train your diet. But for some reason, I've always found a way that, to me, it feels like I can out-train my diet. Because I love chips and I love junk food. But yeah, so whenever it comes to some of the faster guys, I would almost consider myself like the Clydesdale of faster people.
Okay.
Because here's a story. So I was training for my very first marathon. It was the Mobile Marathon in 2019. And I was doing a 20-mile run on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, which is originally where I'm from. And so I was doing a 10-mile out and back. It was a 20-mile run. And I get 15, 16 miles into it. I'm starting to feel like I'm cramping up. And so I was like, this is my first real long run for this training block. And at mile 18, my body starts shutting down. And I start to walk. And at mile 19, I have to call my wife. And I'm in tears, crying. My body is convulsing. And I'm just sitting on the side of Highway 90 in Gulfport, just like this wreck on the side of Highway 90. And I'm telling my wife, I was like, I don't know what's wrong, but I'm not doing too good over here. And so she comes and picks me up, and evidently I just did not know how to properly fuel for my run. And so from that point forward, I started doing some research and investing in gels and properly fueling myself. And so really the gels for me are the biggest impact during a run. I can't really do normal gels. I always go for the liquid goos. And I know a lot of people hate on the liquid goos because of the big bulky packaging and the taste of them and stuff like that. But for me, I'm normally breathing hard anyways, and so I just can't really breathe with all of that paste in my mouth. And so the liquid goos are my go-to.
Got it. Kudos to you, though, for not being like, you know what, this marathon thing's not for me. You didn't let that stop you.
Yeah. No,
that's impressive.
Yeah, I did that run. I think I only did 19 miles out of the 20-mile run for that one.
Only.
Yeah. But then the next week I came back and did a 17-mile run, but it was almost fully at marathon pace, and I properly fueled, and it was just a huge confidence booster for me. And I'm like, okay, it's not my fit, because I kept being real down on myself, thinking my fitness wasn't where it was supposed to be. But in reality, I just wasn't fueling correctly. So
game changer.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
For sure.
You mentioned junk food. Is there something when you're running and you get done, you're like, wow, I cannot wait to eat this?
Yeah. Yes. I would say the reason I'm pausing is because there's a lot of things, a lot of foods going through my mind.
That's awesome.
But I would probably say my go-to is pizza or donuts. Like one of the two.
Okay.
I know that's, but yeah, so whenever I qualified for Boston, we went to a little local pizza joint around Biloxi, and it was just heaven on earth, like manna or something like that, you know, like it was like the greatest thing. So I always think about that after a race or something like that. I guess it just triggers in my mind, like, you want pizza. Yeah.
You need this.
Yeah.
You just ran for this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you deserve pizza right now.
Absolutely. You talked about the community aspects and lessons that you've learned from running and your favorite race, but is there a favorite running memory that you have?
Yeah, and I've mentioned it a couple times already, and I think it's because this race was just so huge for me, and it was the 2022 Mississippi Gulf Coast Marathon, which I know you're a big fan of that race as well. But I had ran the half in 2019. And it was an awesome race. And so if I ever did qualify for Boston, I wanted to do the Mississippi Marathon.
What?
Yeah.
The ramp, the last month. You're like, you know what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before I was talking about the overcoming thing, like in my mind, I'm like, okay, you've got a mile left or a mile and a half left. I think it's like right at 25 mile, or it's like a mile or a little bit over a mile left. That the ramp is the on-ramp. So I knew I wanted to run that race for somewhere local. But this year, the 2022 Mississippi Gulf Coast Marathon, the weather was atrocious. The headwinds, it rained.
That's right.
All 26 miles. And from the half marathon point forward, it was just blasting you in the face. And it was just absolutely miserable. But for some reason, I was finding my groove through every mile, and I kept hitting my splits like I wanted to. And it was a great race for me. But I distinctly remember at Edgewater Mall in Biloxi, my wife and my kids and my dad and stepmom were up there in the parking lot, and I could hear them cheering, but in my mind, I was toast. I just kept crossing my throat. I'm done. I don't have anything left. And I think that was like around mile 16 or 17. So I still had a ways to go. And it's so clear in my mind, whenever I crossed that finish line, I could hear my dad yelling out my time, 2:58:14, 2:58:14, and seeing just maybe 30 feet down my wife holding our kids, and them just with tears in their eyes, smiling and cheering me on, and I just fell to my knees. And the medical people come over and like ask me, do I need anything? And I'm like, no, but just like, all of the emotions and everything just came rushing out in those moments, like seeing my wife and my kids and my family and stuff like that. So for me, that is by far the greatest running memory that I have. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
My first Mississippi Gulf Coast was not that experience. I'm like, I was just grateful to be done. And I just did the half.
Oh, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was grateful.
Oh, my gosh.
I walked over there into the outfield and just died in the grass afterwards.
And then you're like, I have to climb these steps to get out of here. Right. And it's still pouring rain.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, oh, it was terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when the year I did it for the half, the year that you're talking about, and the road was slippery, especially going up that ramp, and I was, and then of course coming down it, you were like, okay, do I chance this or like? So this past year, I was like, I'm gonna beat the ramp. But of course, this year the weather was great. It started off a little sprinkling, and you're like, not again. But yeah, so glad we were there together. Didn't know we were there together.
Right, no.
But and you finished before I finished my half, so it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, that ramp is a beast for sure. But that's what I kept telling myself is if I can just make it up this ramp, I know I get to go down the backside of it.
But you have to keep going further.
You do.
Than the half does, because we go down and then there's a turning point. But
in your mind, you're always looking for that next step that you're like pushing towards. And I see all these people turning up there, and I'm like, okay, I get to turn around right here.
False.
And they're like, full marathoners, keep on going. And I'm like, no. Are you kidding me? And I'm like, where is this? It feels like it's a million miles away.
I was going to ask, how much further do you go?
I think it's only like a quarter mile, maybe a half mile or something like that. It's like a quarter mile. It feels like an eternity.
Oh, I'm sure. Especially after coming off the ramp and you're just like, this is stupid.
Yeah. And then you turn around and then you're crossing back everybody. Man, I could have turned that right there.
Darn it. That's nuts. I love that so much. Do you listen to music when you're, you did talk about worship music early on. Do you still listen to music when you run?
I do, on my training runs and stuff like that, I do. And I am a pretty eclectic music freak.
Okay.
So,
okay.
The whole spectrum is there. Everything from Andy Mineo, rap music, country, but honestly, I normally have two go-tos.
Okay.
Emarosa, it's like a hardcore screamo type music. And
I'm learning so much about you.
I know, but normally my go-to for probably like 75% is EDM trap music. So
sure.
Yeah, look it up. It's don't knock it till you try it thing. But so that's my go-to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm probably going to get a lot of flack.
I'm not here to judge. Do you have a recovery tool that you like to use?
Yeah, normally it's just the bed, but
fair.
Yeah. No, the foam roller, a nice foam roller for me is because I probably don't stretch like I should. And there's a lot of people talk, most of your runs should be easier type runs. But because I don't run as many miles to try to run the paces that I need to be running, I push myself a lot harder in all of my training runs.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. And if anyone wants to know this, they can follow Clint on Strava.
Yeah. And so I'm normally hurting pretty good at the end of all of my runs. So I have a knockoff Theragun pulsating massager and then a foam roller. But to me, the foam roller is probably the best tool for me for stretching, for getting out tight muscles. It's by far the greatest tool that I have. There's probably better ones out there, but that's what I use.
Okay. If it works for the elite, it works for Clint. Speaking of your pace, we have a Patreon supporter, James Contrada, who wants to know, how do you maintain your insane pace?
I honestly do not know. I get into the red zone and I try to stay there and hold on as long as possible. So I think it's Lance Johnson that always, because he does all these crazy 100-milers, last man
friends
standing.
With really weird people.
Yeah, last man standing runs and stuff. And we used to do Spartan runs and obstacle course races together, Lance and I did.
Of course you guys did.
Yeah. And so one of the things he always said, and I picked up on that too, is you can die at the finish line. And or did it kill you? You know, I dipped down into that red zone, and a lot of people do the heart rate running, and they train. I don't want my heart rate to go over 140 or 150 or whatever the case may be. Me, I like stay in the 170s and try to hold on as long as I possibly can. So I do not know, James, but I get in the zone and I try to hold on for dear life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. And you called out James. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a cross-training activity when you're not running?
Yeah. You're probably going to like this one. For me, we've recently, over the past year or so, bought a small farm, and have remodeled the home and stuff like that out there, but we've got some mini horses. And
Okay.
so my daughter rides horses, and these horses were not trained or friendly at all. And so my cross training is breaking mini horses.
That is definitely a new one.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does one do that, Glenn?
Yeah. So you wrangle them up and hold on and try to keep them from dragging you across the field. So there's some strength there. It builds your legs up. And for me, you do that for a couple hours a day, every other weekend, and that's pretty good cross training. But beyond that, probably rowing.
Okay.
I love to row.
Same, yeah.
And we recently got a row machine from my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, and it's a whole different animal. The strength side of it, but also the cardio side of it.
Sure.
And I know there's a lot of people that can attest to what rowing does, but it's a amazing cross-training tool.
Oh, for sure. You get off and you're like, I just can't believe I worked my whole body. I mean, you feel it. You're like, well, okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And you Google it and you're like, is rowing equivalent to running? And people are like, yeah, if at whatever certain paces, rowing and running is equivalent.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I can row a 10K, and no, it's completely different. I'm just going to be the first one to tell you, it is not the same.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Is there a race that you're like, nah, I don't think I'll go back and do that one?
Yeah, so for me, for the longest time, I was doing obstacle course races. And I was trying to do the strength thing as well as the running thing. And I still love the combination of the two. But since I've almost been exclusively running, but in 2016, I was still very much into the obstacle course races. And I did the Alabama Spartan Super. And the Super, I think, is 12 or 13 miles long.
Okay.
And that particular race, I was 8 miles into the race. And I was running in the competitive heat with the elites or whatever.
Shocking that you would do that.
And I think I was somewhere in the top 10, maybe top 15 or something like that overall in the race. And I could feel I was starting to slip a little bit. And I knew I only had 4, maybe 5 miles left, maybe 3 miles. I can't remember, somewhere around 8 miles. And they had these energy chews, like energy blocks on the table, but they were caffeinated. And I grabbed a couple packs of them as I passed by. Once again, back to not properly fueling for things. I had never really fueled for any race. And to me, at the time, this was a long race for me. And so I grabbed, I think it was 2 packs of these energy chews, and I just took the whole pack.
Okay.
I just ate the whole pack, one after the other. And maybe a mile or a mile and a half later, I ate the whole other pack. I think there's 5 of these chews in each one of the packs. And so all of that caffeine at mile 10 destroyed me. And I started cramping and could not walk. And I was still trying to keep up with the top of the race and stay in those front runners. And my legs locked up, my arms locked up from doing the rope climbs and stuff like that. And so for me, that was my point where I decided, I started my current job in 2016. And so that was the transformation point for me. And I think that is the last time I did an obstacle course race, was that race, because it traumatized me that badly. I could not walk. I think I ended up finishing like 50th or 60th overall or something that race. Maybe 40th or something, but I literally walked the last mile because my legs were so trashed.
Man.
Yeah.
Oh,
so that was my transition into just running.
Like, I'm done.
Yeah, this is it for me.
Let's say that somebody comes to you and they're like, Clint, I want to start hitting the pavement. What is a piece of advice you give them?
Yeah, for me, I always just tell myself and tell the people around me, get up and move. all of us want to do things in life, but you're never going to be an expert until you get up and start doing that thing. Somebody that wants to start running or wants to start cross training, get up and try it out. Find somebody around you to help hold you accountable, and just do it. Get up and just move.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the fastest person. You could be the slowest person. But if you get out there and you really just start trying, you'll start finding those small wins in the process. And once you start hitting those small wins, you start motivating yourself. And like I said before, the consistency side of it, you become more consistent. It becomes a habit. And you'll look back 2, 3, 4 years from now, and you won't even be the same person that was sitting back there that wanted to be a runner 4 years ago. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Love that. Let's talk Boston, because you're coming from Boston.
Yeah.
And the journey there, because that was one of your goals that you had. How does that feel to have accomplished that goal?
Yeah, so I never ran in high school. I never ran in college. I started running in 2016, so I was around 30 or 31 years old when I started really running, thinking I could be a halfway decent runner. And so as I started doing these 5 and 10Ks, I was only putting in maybe 10 to 15 miles a week or something like that. And I would start coming in the top 10 at the local 5 and 10Ks and stuff like that. And I was like, maybe I'm halfway decent at this running thing. And so I started running a little bit more. And then I started doing more research on running. And for a runner, what is like the thing? What is that thing that all runners, and everywhere, anybody you talk to, everywhere you go, it's always the Boston Marathon. That's like the holy grail of the running. And so once I started getting into running more and more, I started setting my sights on Boston. So in 2019, I did my first marathon. It was the Mobile Marathon before they switched the course around. So it brought you through Spring Hill and all of that, where all of the hills
Central,
are. Yeah, Fireman's Hill and all of that over there where you want to die. But I will say the Mobile Marathon is very similar to the Boston course.
Oh, okay.
Or
hills at the end.
The old Mobile Marathon. But I ran the 2019 Mobile Marathon, and I was trying to break 3 hours and 30 minutes in that marathon. And I knew my fitness was probably a lot better than 3 hours and 30 minutes, but I did my last 15-mile run before the Mobile Marathon in 2019, and I got a stress fracture in my foot. It was 5 or 6 days before the race.
No.
Yeah, and I was like, man, I trained for this.
Yeah.
And I ran it. I went ahead and ran the marathon.
Shocking.
Yeah, with the stress fracture. And I ended up running 3 hours and 22 minutes with a stress fracture in my foot. And I was like, okay, this is it. It's game on now. And so COVID hit and all of that stuff and shut everything down. I didn't run as much as I wanted to. And then I got back into it and I said, you know what? I'm going to qualify for the Boston Marathon. And so in 2022, I set my sights on the Mississippi Marathon, trained for it. I knew my fitness was there. It was, like I said, it was a really bad day, but I hit my goal. You know, for me, it was to beat 3 hours and 5 minutes to qualify. And so I beat that by about 7 minutes or so.
What?
Yeah, yeah. And actually Boston is famously known for people qualifying, hitting their time, but then them cutting even lower into that because of so many people qualifying. And so I actually only made the cut by a minute and a half or something.
Wow.
To get into Boston, yeah. And so I submitted my application, got into Boston, and started training from there. All right. So this training block going into Boston was actually a lot different. My training block where I prepared to qualify for Boston was amazing. I was living next to the University of Mobile, and there's a lot of the cross-country runners from the University of Mobile run around there, and on Strava there's a lot of segments that you can compete against and things like that. There's a lot of good running right around the area, and so it was very easy for me to train. And then, like I say, we move out to the boonies, and I'm running against dogs that are trying to attack you,
wow.
and dirt and gravel roads, and nobody runs where I live at, and there's really no good places to run at. So if I'm going to get any kind of mileage in, I have to drive somewhere to run. So this training block preparing for Boston was very hard. And at no one point was I very confident that I was in the fitness that I wanted to be at to run Boston.
Wow.
So I was always on the fence. I had an A goal and a B goal, right? So my A goal was to run Boston in under 3 hours, which was a pretty high goal because Boston is a very hilly course as well. And then my B goal was like, if I don't feel like my fitness is there, I'm just going to run Boston for the enjoyment and just take in the experience and treat it like a victory lap kind of thing. And so I trained for the A goal, but like I say, living on a small farm, and we have 4 kids, and remodeling a home and work, and life is just always there. I was not hitting my mileage like I wanted to, and I was never really confident that I was in the place that I wanted to be at to hit that A goal. And so there were a couple of test runs that I was going to test myself. One of them was the Mobile Half in January, and I told myself if I could run around an hour and 21 minutes, hour and 20 minutes, I knew I would be okay. And I did the holiday half.
Okay.
Was that in November or December?
Oh yeah, the Bayou. Okay.
Yeah, in the Bayou. I think that's in December. And I did it, and I did horrible at that run. To me, I did really bad at that run.
Okay.
And I think I ran like a 125, almost 126 in that. But I felt like I was in like 122 shape. Anyways, and so fast forward only a month later, I did the Mobile, and I ran a 122, and I was like, okay, this is a lot better, but I still wasn't quite where I wanted to be at. So all the way up until I'm on the starting line at Boston, I'm questioning whether or not I could run this sub 3 hours. And so I had the goal, and everybody talks about the strategy for Boston because the first 10K is mostly downhill.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You're fresh, and your legs are feeling good, and you just want to go. And you've got all of these runners around you, thousands of runners. And my goal was to take it conservatively because I knew I wasn't probably in the fitness I wanted to be at for the end of the race. And so I wanted to conserve as much energy as I could for the hills of Boston, which is around 16 to 21 miles, 16 to 21.
Insane.
Yeah. So I'm standing there on the starting line, just overanalyzing and visualizing the race and everything. Take a step back, 2 days later, we fly into Boston and got the whole family with me and everything. Fly into Boston. I go get the rental car. My wife is waiting on the luggage. Get the rental car. We're like, yeah, we were calling to see how much it would be to rent car seats and stuff like that. And we ended up just checking in the car seats and everything and with the luggage and stuff. And so we canceled the car seats when I go get the rental car. Get the rental car, come around. I call my wife and like, hey, where are you at? It's been 45 minutes since the flight has landed. She's like, I'm still waiting on the luggage.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? And there had already been 2 flights come in, and something's wrong. And we flew into Orlando and then flew to Providence, but we never got off the plane in Orlando. Well, evidently, they took all of our luggage, car seats, and everything off in Orlando, and we didn't know about it. All of my marathon gear, shoes that I've trained in, KT tape, all my gels, everything were in the luggage. And I'm like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
But beyond that, the car seats were there as well. So we're stuck in Providence, Rhode Island, no car seats. It's 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. On Saturday night, the race is on Monday. I'm supposed to do a shakeout run with a buddy of mine or a couple buddies of mine at 8 o'clock the next morning in Boston. So it started mentally piling all of the things on. I go back up to the car rental place and like, hey, listen, they lost our luggage, all of the car seats and everything. The guy's like, listen, come pick out which car seats you need.
Aww.
Take them with you, man. And so we get car seats because I didn't know how we were going to get even
Sure.
to the hotel. Get to the hotel. My wife is an amazing person. She's like, this is your experience. I want you to do all of the things this weekend. We're going to wake up. I want you to do the shakeout run. So we wake up after just a few hours of sleep. We stop by Walmart to get the kids' clothes because we lost all of our luggage because we're still wearing the stuff from the last day, and go to do the shakeout run. I do the shakeout run, get my bib and package, do the convention center and do the whole experience and stuff like that. And I have to go buy all new shoes, shorts, tops, all new gels, KT tape, socks.
You're like, my magic socks.
My magic socks are gone. Yeah, and I didn't get the Walmart socks this time. Yeah, I did go and get some proper socks. And so it was just mentally, I was down and out. And so fast forward, I'm standing on the starting line with all the new gear. I went and got some Vaporflies from the Nike store and told the lady what was going on and stuff like that. So I had not ran even 1 mile in these shoes, brand new shoes, and I'm about to run the Boston Marathon. And it was just such an insane experience because in my mind, I'm going through all of these things. The race starts, and I was in the first wave, and I think there was 8,000 people in the first wave.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
8,000 people.
What time was your corral that you got released?
It was the 10 o'clock
Oh, really?
corral.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the very first one.
Okay.
And so I'm maybe a quarter mile from the start line because of all. Oh yeah, I was in corral number 4, and so the race starts. Everybody talks about the crowds of Boston just being the game-changing experience for people, and I remembered in the Mississippi Marathon where every 3 or 4 miles there'd be a lady out there with a cowbell, ding, 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 cow, keep going. And so the crowds aren't that huge on the Mississippi Marathon. But here I am in Boston, and it's 5 people deep for all 26 miles, just screaming. And I remember the first 2, 3, 4 miles, just having chills on my arms and tears in my eyes because the people in the crowds were so loud. It was like a concert. You could feel it in your chest. It was the most awesome experience I've ever had. You could raise your arms up, let's go, and they would react to it. And they would just start saying, yeah. I was having fun with it. But then I looked down at my watch, and I'm hitting my splits. I'm hitting 6:42, 6:43 per mile, 6:45, 6:38s. And I'm like, man, I feel amazing. And the crowd was literally feeding me mile after mile after mile. And I get to the hills, and there's multiple hills, but really there's 4 distinct hills in Boston, starting at mile 16. And I look over to the guy next to me. I don't know who he was or anything, but I'm like, was that the first hill? And he didn't say anything to me. And then we come around, and they're like, here we go, hill number 2. And I'm like, that was the first hill. That was nothing. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm feeling good through these hills. And I look down at my watch, and through the hills, I'm still staying under 6:50. So to run a sub 3 hour marathon, you have to run under 6:52 per mile pace. And I look down at my watch, I'm like hitting 6:45s and 6:48s and stuff like that through the hills. And I'm like, whoa, I might be able to run this sub 3 like I wanted to. And then we get to the third hill. And I don't know, I tried to do as much research as I could, but this was a very short hill, but it was very steep. And it took the wind out of my sails. And I could start feeling it in my legs. And then, of course, the last hill is Heartbreak Hill, mile 21. It's a half-mile hill, 5-degree incline or something like that. But like I say, the crowds just pushed you all the way up that hill, just them screaming. And it was an absolutely insane experience. I get to the top, they got a big banner that says, you survived Heartbreak Hill. And so from that point forward, I knew I had 5 miles left. and I just started pouring on the coals and putting it in, and I crossed the finish line 2:59:01. Yeah, 2:59:01.
Wow.
And I felt like I had a lot of gas left in the tank. But to me, it was just such a crazy experience because, one, I hit my goal time like I wanted to, but two, I really got to take it all in, I felt like, and experience the race like I wanted to. And yeah, that was Boston.
Wow. Did you ever get your luggage?
We did get our luggage.
Okay.
Yeah, my wife and my father-in-law went at 10 o'clock Sunday night, the night before the race. They drove from Boston all the way back down to Providence because they had put it on the flight from Orlando back up to Providence. So they didn't get back until close to midnight from Providence. But by that time, I had already had it in my mind. This is what I'm wearing because I didn't think we were getting it back.
Flat Clint was laid out and ready to go.
Yeah, I had the shoes. Everything was already out.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a story.
I know.
What a memory. Wow. Do you want to qualify for Boston again?
Well, that race did qualify me for Boston again.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm putting this out there. I'm going to run Chicago next year.
Okay.
Yeah, which is another marathon major. But Chicago is a whole different beast because it's a super flat course. The world record was just set there last year. And so what I would like to do is, unlike I did for Boston, because I quit running for a few months before Boston, before I started training for Boston, I'd like to maintain my fitness to some level. And I would really love to go sub 250 in Chicago.
Okay. Well, between wrestling and the mini horses,
the mini horses is going to get me there.
It's going to get you there.
Yeah.
Wow, that is wild.
I know it. Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy run. And I've mentioned Lance a few times, but Lance texted me while I was in Boston, wishing me good luck. And I told him what happened. We lost the luggage and stuff like that, and how I was getting in my head mentally. And it was just, I could feel it starting to weigh me down a little bit. And it was the day before the race. It was Sunday. And I had gone to pick up some food. And so it was late in the evening on Sunday. And I was texting back and forth to Lance. And one of the things he said was, how awesome would this be to show your kids how you've overcome this, despite all of these walls being put up, that you break down these walls and you still run it, and what an example you can be for your kids. And I was like, man, you know what? That really started breaking down those walls in my mind, those mental barriers I was putting up, and gave me a completely different perspective about the situation that I was in at the time. So that was huge for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. So Chicago, breaking 250, going back to Boston. What are your other goals, Clint? Do you have any other ones?
As far as running goes, no, that's pretty much all I have.
That's it. That's all I have. That's it.
Yeah. I would like to find one of the last man standing races. The farthest distance I've ever ran is marathon distance, which for some is plenty. I've got some crazy friends, and they start dipping their toes into the ultra territory, and I would like to do one of the last man standing races. To me, it's just such an intriguing style on ultra running because it's like 4.1 miles loops, and it starts every hour on the hour, and then you run 4 miles, and then an hour later you run 4 miles again, and there's no second, third, fourth place, whatever. It's just whoever finishes it last. So I would like to do one of those races. I don't know when I'll do one. Maybe this fall, early next year, something like that. That would be a pretty cool thing to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You've mentioned the word overcomer several times, and that's something you tell yourself. Is that your mantra?
Yeah, like I say, you can die at the finish line is one of the things that always follows closely right behind. You need to overcome this. You are an overcomer, whatever it may be in life, whether it's something at my job or if our family's going through something. My mom passed away in 2020, and that was one of those things I told myself then as well. And so immediately for the racing side of things, it's you're an overcomer, you can die at the finish line. But the question that James had, how do you sustain that? It's keep pounding. And I tell myself, I believe it's Stephen Furtick, who is the pastor for Elevation Church in North Carolina. I listened to a sermon years ago, and he keep pounding. And to me, it's just something quick I can tell myself to keep going. Just keep pounding, keep pounding. Whether it's you're running a quarter mile and you start to lose pace, keep pounding to pick up that momentum, to get it back up. Everything in life, we're always going to face obstacles and hurdles and walls in our life. You have to overcome those and then keep pounding. So,
wow, that's good.
Yeah.
What is your favorite length to run, whether it's race day or whether it's a training block? What gets Clint excited to be like, yes, I can't wait to go pound this, and, lengthwise?
Yeah, and we were talking about before, if I'm training for a marathon or something, I normally stick somewhere between the 30 to 40 miles per week range. But if I'm not training for a marathon, it's normally somewhere around 15 to 20 something miles, which compared to other people that are of equal fitness, that's nothing for them. There's a lot of people that run 50, 60, 80, 100 miles a week, but I can't sustain that. So for me, what really gets me going is like a 6 to 8 miler.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I like the longer runs, over 10 miles, but it takes a lot of time. And then I always find myself wanting to go a lot faster to speed it up a little bit. And I end up suffering because of that.
There's the real reason why Clint's fast. I just wanted to end. I'm done.
Just get it done. Whenever I first started running, the 2 to 3 mile range was really my bread and butter. But now that I've started getting some base mileage over the last few years, 6 to 8 miles is really my target. If I can run 6 or 7 miles, like a 10K time, that's perfect for me.
I like it. There we go. You've talked about the new farm. You've talked about your family. But when you're not running, what fuels you? What are you passionate about?
Yeah, really, I always go back to family because my wife is my best friend. I love playing with my kids, and I love the animals on the farm and stuff like that. And so I've never been one of those people to just sit down and veg out in front of the TV. I literally feel like my time is being wasted when I do those things. So I constantly am doing something. Outside, I love being outdoors, no matter what it is. If it's sitting outside with Megan, my wife, and drinking coffee on the front porch, or if it's wrangling mini horses, or chasing the goats around, or riding around the fields and stuff like that. That's really what consumes most of my time, and that's where I put most of my value in. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, family.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, I alluded to it beforehand, and I tie it back to those mantras that I live by and that I speak into myself. I try to speak them over other people as well. But really, there's no limit to what people can do. You get on some of these running forums and stuff like that, and you're like, hey, can I run a sub 3 hour marathon? I do 25 miles per week. And you're going to hear a resounding no, you cannot do it. But what I tell people is that there is no limit to what you can push yourself through. You're going to hit walls. You're going to have limitations. But always push yourself to find what your capacity is. A lot of people get into running to find out where that limit is and to overcome their own things in their life, whatever it may be. And if it's community, if it's friendship, if it's fitness, if it's health, whatever it may be, find that thing and keep pounding.
Keep pounding.
Keep pounding.
Oh, Clint, this has been awesome, my friend. So excited. And I learned so much about you. I had no idea. Oh, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Yay.
I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you, Clint. It was so good. Absolutely amazing. And would have never guessed that you started running because of work. And I also would have never guessed, it was something that I learned about Clint, was that he uses running as a way to manage anger. Because to me, Clint is one of the nicest guys and absolutely authentic and real. And so to know more about him in that way, I know is very vulnerable for him. And so I cannot thank you enough, Clint, for doing that and for bringing running on that level that we all need. And so I really appreciate that. Guys, if you've not met Clint, I highly encourage you to go meet him. He's absolutely amazing. And if you go up to him at an event and you're like, hey, Clint, I'm Allison, he's going to be like, hey, Allison, I'm Clint. And he'll start carrying on a conversation with you. That's the kind of person that Clint is. And he's absolutely just 100% the real deal. And so he loves meeting people. He loves the community. So grateful for Clint and what he does and what he brings to this running community. So thank you, my friend. Absolutely phenomenal. Like, such a cool human being. So definitely go check him out. Again, thank you so much, Gilliard Tech Services, for making this podcast possible, not only for this month as he is powering up our podcast, but also every week he takes time to make us all sound really good on the podcast. And so I cannot thank him enough for all that he sacrifices for Run Your Story. And guys, definitely go check him out at gilliardts.com. He really has a really cool mindset about things when it comes to all computers. FYI, I don't like technology, but he does. And he does such a great job explaining things and such a great job of bringing your ideas to life on the screen for other people to see. So definitely go check him out for all your website needs. If you need a little help understanding websites or anything like that, he's also your go-to. Like all things website and computer, top notch. Go see Greg Gilliard. I will vouch for him. And as always, Marcel, thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to be able to sit and share. This was really cool for Clint and I because we both are members of Mars Hill, and so to be able to come together and share his story in a place that we share community was really, really special. And so thank you so much to Mars Hill and for believing in the running community, believing in stories like Clint's. And so thank you for giving us such a safe place to be able to come and to share our stories. Patreon supporters, love you, love you, love you. You guys are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for taking care of this podcast. They make this possible. So Run Your Story would not have made it this long without our Patreon supporters. And so we cannot wait to see what the future holds and can't wait for more Patreon supporters. So we have different tiers. Guys, go check it out. You can find us on the Patreon app or on the website. Definitely go check us out there. Like, share, comment. I know you're going to want to share Clint's story. And definitely give feedback. Our Patreon supporters love to see when people post about your stories because they matter. They need to be heard, and we believe that. So thank you to our Patreon supporters. All right, guys, until next time, go run your story because every story needs to be heard.